So I think most of you know this by now, but I grew up in California, and specifically my wife and I, we grew up in what is known as the San Francisco Bay Area. And I know when I say the San Francisco Bay Area, some of you start having some images that may not be so polite about that region of our country. And that's okay, I get it. And some of you may even be looking at me thinking, oh, Jonathan, now I get it. Like, now I understand why you're the way that you are, and maybe you're onto something. But I think when most people start thinking and having these ideas or images of the San Francisco Bay Area, typically an image that will come to your mind is this one right here. What is that? The Golden Gate Bridge. Like, it's iconic. People even internationally know what the Golden Gate Bridge is. Now, what's interesting about the Golden Gate Bridge is it's not actually gold. Does anyone know the actual color of the Golden Gate Bridge? Yeah, it's called International Orange. That's the technical color. So we should probably start calling this the International Orange Gate Bridge, but it probably just doesn't sound quite as cool, so I don't think that's going to catch on. But that is one of the primary reasons. That paint is one of the primary things that are actually keeping corrosion at bay. Rust and other things are not creeping into that bridge because of that paint. And the painting of the bridge, you might have heard this, is an ongoing, never-ending process. Since 1933, they have painted it, and they've repainted it, and they've taken the old paint off and put new paint on, and as soon as you think you're done, well, you got to start all over again. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a horrible job, so tedious, never-ending. I don't think I would like it. In fact, I wouldn't like some of you to have it because I just don't think you do a very good job. You would probably be one of those people that say, you know what, I'm gonna let the corrosion creep in, and let's just let that thing drop into the bay, and let's let the whole city, and maybe that big earthquake can come, and that whole state can just be like washed into the sea. So I'm gonna be glad that you actually, hell in a handbasket. That's kind of your perception of California, and that's why we had to come out here to Kentucky. That's really what it was. So I don't know if you like jobs like that. I don't personally like those jobs that just never end. But there is something in all of our lives that's a lot like the painting of the Golden Gate Bridge. That it constantly needs upkeep. It constantly needs maintenance. It constantly needs work. And if you don't do the work, if you don't do the maintenance, if you don't do the upkeep, well, things are going to start falling apart. And what I'm talking about is relationships. Every single one of us, we want great relationships, but great relationships don't just happen. You actually have to maintain them. You have to put some work into them. Look at it this way. Have you ever seen an ugly wedding before? Like, even when it comes to the simple weddings that they haven't put a lot of money into it, have you ever really seen an ugly wedding? Typically, there's a lot of joy, there's a lot of excitement to a wedding, right? But have you ever seen an ugly marriage? Like, we've all seen ugly marriages. What happened there? When they got married, there was excitement, there was joy, there was all this hope, and then 8 years down the road, well, now they're signing divorce papers. What happened? Well, they forgot that marriage, relationships need maintenance, needs upkeep, needs work. Let's look at another side of relationships. Have you ever seen a couple, and they've got their newly born baby, and the baby's got their little eyes closed, and they're just so tiny, and they're so cute, and they're so adorable, and mom and dad, they're smiling at the camera with the baby, and they've got this sleepy but very contented look on their face, and you just go, oh my goodness, they are heading for so much trouble. Do we ever have that thought when you're looking at that little baby and mom and dad? Like, that never comes to our mind. But have you ever seen the interaction between a father and his son, or parents with their child who maybe is in elementary or middle school or high school, and you hear what's being said and the interaction that they have with each other, and you think, they are heading for so much trouble. Anyone ever had that thought before? See, our relationships, every single relationship, it needs us to put some work behind it. There needs to be maintenance. There needs to be upkeep. And so what are we going to do? Well, for the next several weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to explore some work that we need to put into our relationships. We're starting a new series, and it's called Work in Progress. Why? Because all of our relationships are works in progress, and you will continue to work on your relationships, hopefully, if you want great relationships, until the day that you die. Specifically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a section of Scripture where Jesus gives us a command, arguably the most important command that Jesus ever gives. It's a mandate that he gives that I am convinced that if we actually take it serious and live it out, we're all going to have really great relationships. Where's this command found? It's actually found in John chapter 15. And if you're with us and you're saying, wait, I've been around for a little over a year, and John chapter 15, haven't we done like an entire series, like a 4-week series in John chapter 15? Jonathan, you're going back to John chapter 15? Yes, and here's why. If you find like a vein of gold in a rock, you want to mine that thing, right? You want to just like keep going back until you mine all that gold, right? Because it's gold. You do that. This is pure gold. What Jesus is teaching in John chapter 15, it is pure gold. And so we're going to continue to mine this thing, and I don't think we'll ever get to all the wonderful things that John said, or that Jesus says in John chapter 15. He is somewhere in between the Last Supper and the moment that he is arrested, he is put on trial, he is executed, and eventually 3 days later he rises from the dead. So this is an important moment in Jesus' ministry. This is one of those moments that he's giving marching orders to his disciples. And so they're leaning in, they want to hear everything he has to say, and in the midst of what he's sharing, he gives this command, and we'll eventually get to it, but let's go ahead and do some lead up to it. John chapter 15, let's start in verse 1. Jesus says, I am the vine. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. So he's starting off, he's saying, okay, let me give you this word picture so that you can understand kind of the relationship that I have with God and I have with you. Here it is. I am this grapevine, and God is the gardener. He continues though. He says, he cuts off. Who cuts off? God cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. What's God doing? What's Jesus talking about? Jesus is in the midst of explaining how when we stay connected to him, that our lives actually start to produce something. And God is at work with that. He's actually the one that's helping to produce this good fruit. But sometimes we don't actually produce good things with our lives. And so God steps in and he actually begins to remove certain things that are not so helpful in our lives. This whole idea of like bearing fruit, I know that's a strange idea, and sometimes we say these things in church and it's like, wait, what does that actually mean? That's just kind of a churchy thing. So let me just kind of explain, what does it mean to actually bear fruit, whether that's good fruit or bad fruit? Imagine you've got a little bit extra money and you hire somebody, and you hire them with the intention of hanging out with the people that you hang out with. So they're covert, right? They go and they hang out with your extended family, and they hang out with your coworkers and your church family and your life group, and their job is to ask questions about you. And so they're taking notes because they're finding out about what other people think about you. And then they come back and they report to you, and they say, okay, this is what people say about you. Whatever they say about you, that's typically the fruit that your life is producing. So if they come back and they say, oh, yeah, Josh, such a wonderful guy, great character, servant's heart, guess what? That's the fruit that Josh is producing with his life. If they come back and they say, well, John, he's a nice guy, but man, when things don't go his way, he gets really nasty and he gets really mean. Nita, she's fantastic, but she's got this real streak in her that's, whatever it is that they come back with you or to you with, guess what? That's the fruit that your life is producing. So if you ever have a little extra money and you want to know the fruit that your life is producing, just hire somebody. And maybe it's really creepy and your friends will be like, that's a strange guy, just start asking this question. Maybe you won't get the information that you want, but that's just one idea behind this. All right, let's keep reading. Verse 3. He says, you are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Verse 4, remain in me as I also remain in you. So this idea that we need to stay close to Jesus. He's going to say this over and over again. He's going to say this word remain. He's saying, you need to stay close to me. If you want to produce this really good fruit, you have to stay close to me. You have to follow me. You have to stay connected to me. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. This makes sense. You don't even have to be a gardener for this to make sense. You cut off a branch, and that branch is going to wither and die. It needs to stay connected to the source of nutrients and life. Jesus is saying, that's me. That's who I am. Verse 5 says, I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, if you don't stay close to me, you can do none of that. None of that fruit will actually be produced in your life. I think most of us, we hear these words, we know these words, you've studied these words before, but isn't it true? Like, isn't this promise true? Jesus is making a promise here. If you stay close to him, your life is going to produce some really good fruit. And maybe you've seen this at work with friends of yours. Maybe you haven't seen them for a while. Maybe it's been 5 years. You kind of grew up with them, but they've kind of done their own thing, and now you finally are back, and you're like, oh, hey, what are you guys doing these days? Oh, yes, we're doing this, and you start doing that catch-up talk. Have you ever talked with somebody, and you just thought to yourself, they're not who they used to be? The way that they're talking, the stories that they're sharing, the words that they're using, the jokes that they're making, man, that's not how they used to be. And so you just ask them, you seem different. And say, yeah, actually, life is a lot different. You know, a few years ago, I was in a real low place, and I had someone that invited me to church, and for the first time, I heard the gospel message in a way that it made sense to me, and Jesus has changed my life. And you say, you know, I thought something was different. Yeah, you've been remaining connected to the vine. That's why your life is different. That's why you're producing this really good fruit. And you probably don't say that, but you're thinking that in your mind. I think we've also seen it on the other side, haven't we? You ever run into somebody that you've known for quite some time, but maybe a year or two has gone by, and then you're talking to them and you're thinking, something is different here. And so you just go ahead and you venture the question. You say, are you still at that church? Are you still serving with your family? Are you guys still going on those mission trips like you used to do years ago, maybe decades ago? And you go, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. You know, I should probably be in church more often, but I'm not. There was this thing that happened and some words were said and I got hurt and, you know, I don't even know if I want to be a part of a church community anymore. I don't even know if I believe in God. And before they even spoke those words to you, you kind of already knew the answer. Like, you know their life was different because they had not stayed connected to Jesus, the source of this life, source of all this good fruit that can be produced in our lives. See, the promise that Jesus gives us is when we stay close to him, when we follow him, the promise is that your life will bear good fruit. And people will look at your life and say, you're different. And they'll even say, you know what? It's better. It's better this way. Let's continue reading. Let's drop down to verse 9. It says, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. So there's a whole interesting interaction. So God is pouring all this love into Jesus. Jesus is pouring his love into the disciples, and the disciples could even say, yep, nope, we've experienced it. We've seen it. Yes, we know that love. So yeah, that comes from the Father. Well, we thank you so much for giving it to us as well. Then Jesus says, now remain in my love. Maybe one of the disciples might even ask, like, okay, so let me make sure I understand your little word picture. So God is the gardener, and he's pouring all this love into you. And you, in turn, are this vine, and you're pouring all this love into us. And as long as we're connected, as long as we remain, as long as we stay close to you, Jesus, we're going to produce all this great fruit. And really, kind of the nutrients that's coming our way, it's love. Jesus says, that's it. That's exactly right. You've nailed it. He continues, verse 10. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. At which point, some people will read, and they'll roll their eyes and say, oh, okay. Oh, I get it. You almost had me there, Jonathan. So it's about the commands. It's about the rules. So this is just like religion 101. As long as you're doing things, well, then you'll appease God. Okay, Christian bait and switch. It's all about grace, but really it's not about grace. It's about doing things that you're supposed to do. Now, I don't know if the disciples were quite as cynical as that. I think maybe even Peter, he gives Andrew a little nudge and says, oh, commands. I bet you there's going to be like 100. And Andrew's like, dude, be quiet. I'm trying to listen to Jesus. But Jesus continues, and he surprises them. He surprises them with something. Drop down to verse 12 for the surprise. Jesus says, my command is this. Peter again nudges Andrew. He's like, wait. Did he just say command, or did he say commands? And Andrew's like, shut up, man. I cannot hear with you yapping, right? And Jesus smiles and says, Peter, you're right. I said command. My command. There's not 100 here. There's one. What is it? Jesus explains it. Love each other. Wait, that's it? That's the command? This is the command that changes everything? This is the command that's going to revolutionize our relationships? I thought there would be more. Well, the truth is, there is more, but we're going to revisit that in just a moment. Let's just leave it there for now, because now what I want to do is I want to talk about relationships. I want to talk about you. I want to talk about me. I want to talk about maybe some of the pitfalls that we have in our relationships that sometimes sabotage our relationships. So I'm going to share with you an object lesson that I wish I had come up with. Sometimes I come up with all these really creative ideas, and it's like, okay, yes, the Bible is coming alive. I wish that I had come up with this one, but I stole this. I stole this from a pastor by the name of Andy Stanley. My guess is he probably stole it from some other pastor, so hey, I'll give credit where credit's due, all the same. All right, so every single one of us, we carry around a box, an invisible box of hopes, dreams, and desires. Every single one of us, we carry around this box, this invisible box wherever we go of hopes, dreams, and desires. And we take this box into every relationship. Most prominently, we probably take this into the marriage relationship. We take this into relationships with our children. We carry this thing around all over the place. Now, if you're young, some of you are younger, you're just starting to kind of figure out what's in your box of hopes, dreams, and desires. And the older you get, the more you realize what's in your box. If you are married, you probably have a good idea of what's in your box, and hopefully you have a decent idea of what's in your spouse's box. Some of you don't, though, and maybe that is some of the problems that you end up having. If you're dating or you want to be dating, it's a really good idea to find out what's in that other person's box of hopes, dreams, and desires. Because as good as things look on the outside, oh, that smile that he gives me, the twinkle in his eye, she looks really good in those tight jeans, right? The outward appearance, that's fine, and that might draw you to them. But what will make or break that relationship is probably what's inside their box of hopes, dreams, and desires. So pay attention. What's in their box? Let's go ahead and relate this to marriage for right now. Everything that I'm going to talk about, it can be related to any relationship, but right now, just because I think it's so obvious, we'll just kind of relate this to marriage itself. So every single one of us, we have a box filled with hopes, dreams, and desires for what we want for the future. So for example, in some of our relationships, when we enter marriage, we have an idea of how much money we're going to have to make, right? Personally, I don't think I need to make too much money, just enough to pay the bills. I don't need anything super fancy, right? Whereas someone else might enter marriage and say, no, we need lots and lots of money. That's what we need. And you may have a clear idea of what you're going to spend money on and what you're not going to spend money on. Some of you enter marriage and you're like, we're going to follow a budget. I'm going to know exactly what's coming in. I know exactly what's going out, and we're going to stick to that budget. Others of you, your hope, dreams, and desire, you don't even know what a budget is. Is that English? That sounds like French. I don't know what a budget is, but I don't think I like it. And still others of you, your hope, dream, and desire is, I'm going to play the lottery. And I'm just going to play that thing until I win, and then I'm just going to survive on the winnings. That's a nice hope, but I would recommend changing that just a little bit. But we enter marriages with this. We enter marriage with a hope, dream, and desire when it comes to what gets cleaned and how it gets cleaned and who ends up cleaning it. My wife and I, when we got married, I had this. I always grew up with dishcloths, like rags, to clean the countertops. And my wife grew up using a sponge. So she's got this sponge that cleans the dishes, and it's got the rough side and then the smooth side. And she uses another one. It's the same sponge, but she lets one get a little more worn, and then she trades it out. And anyway, let me just ask you guys this. I want to show of hands. This is just for fun. I just want to find out. How many of you guys realize that cleaning countertops is just so much better with a rag? I mean, how many of you, does anyone agree with my wife that a sponge is better? You know what? The two of you, well done. The rest of you know that I am the right one on this, right? I had a hope and a dream and a desire for our countertops. She does it her way, I do it my way. That's kind of what has ended up happening. But we have these ideas. We have these thoughts. We have hopes, dreams, and desires when it comes to how we use our time. When you're in a relationship, some of you think, I'm going to spend every waking hour with them. It's going to be wonderful. I never want to leave their side. Some of you are like, I need at least 10 hours a day locked away in my man cave away from the wife and the kids in order to live. We have these hopes, dreams, and desires. When it comes to our weekends, some of you, I want to sleep in all day. I have to work throughout the week. I just want to sleep in. Others are like, sleep in? Now the weekend's for adventures and for excitement, and that's what I want to do with my time. And then we schedule things differently. Maybe we schedule, this is an easy one. We see some people saying, okay, we're gonna let my family, my extended family, have Christmas. We'll throw in Thanksgiving, and maybe we'll throw in Easter, but we'll give your family Flag Day. That's the idea behind our hopes, dreams, and desires when it comes to how they use their time and even vacations a little bit. We have hopes, dreams, and desires for what we live in. Some of us, we're comfortable with apartment living. You know, you don't have to worry about maintenance. You just give the guy a call, and it's like, hey, everything's fixed. Some of you are like, no, I don't want to deal with people pounding above me and, you know, thin walls. I want to have my own house. But I don't care. We can rent. We don't have to buy. Others like, rent, buy. No, I'm going to build. And so others are like, who needs a roof when you can have a tent and sleep out under the stars? So we all have these different thoughts. We have ideas when it comes to travel. I would say that almost every single person I've ever talked to, part of their bucket list of things that they want to do before they die has to do with travel. But some of your hopes, dreams, desires when it comes to travel are different. Some of you are like, oh, you know what? I hear great things about Africa. Definitely want to visit Africa and Australia. Oh, the Great Barrier Reef. And I want to see a dingo and its actual habitat. That would be so neat. And some of you are like, man, international travel, no way. Anything outside the United States freaks me out. We're going to stay right here in the United States. We've got some people in the second service that I know their hopes, dreams, and desires when it comes to traveling, all it has to do is with Disney World. Disney World is where their heart is at because they're afraid if they don't visit at least once a year, they're probably going to get kicked out of the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and they just cannot let that happen, and so they've got to make it down there at least once a year. What about children? Some people are like, no, my hope and my dream and my desire is puppies and never actual human beings. No, I don't want that. Others of you are like, no, I at least want one child. They're so cute. They're so adorable. And others of you, one child? We've all seen The Only Child. They don't get well adjusted. You got to at least have two, maybe a boy and a girl would be best. And then you've got my wife who says, wait, what, two? We need a complete basketball team. And I keep telling her, you have a complete basketball team. I'm the starting point guard. So there it is. That's how that works. And then you've got the T-Days who say, one basketball team. We need a solid two basketball teams. But we come with our hopes, dreams, desires when it comes even to children. All right, what about when it comes to what we drive? You know, the classic, I want to drive a red sports car. I wanted to drive my motorcycle until the day I died. And then I started realizing that day might come sooner if I keep driving this thing. And so somehow it shifted. My hope and dream and desire was a minivan and with like 25 airbags just to make sure that I and my kids are safe. I love minivans. You might laugh, but they're fantastic. Men, I think we all have hopes, dreams, and desires for what our wives don't wear to bed at night. We've got a little bit of a hope there. Ladies, you're thinking, no, he just wants me to be comfortable. Like, he doesn't care what I wear to bed. Ladies, let me just break it to you. If you need this to be comfortable at night, your man does not care nearly as much about your comfort as you actually think he does. So I'm just throwing out there, real talk, Pastor Jonathan, that's all it is. And then finally, you know, we have ideas when it comes to how we're going to solve conflicts. There's going to be some issues, so how are we going to resolve conflict? Some of you are like, well, we'll just talk it out. We'll just share everything that's on our heart. And I was just like, share everything that's on our hearts. Man, there are some things that I've got to keep buried because if I let those things out, you will hate me for the rest of your life. There's other times where people say, you know, it's okay to talk, but there's going to be some screaming. There's going to be some slamming of doors. That's okay, right? No, that's not okay. That's what the dysfunctional family down the street does. And so we have all these different competing hopes, dreams, and desires. Where does all this come from? All right, there are places, interesting places where this comes from, but probably more than anything else, it comes from two sources. It comes from what you actually read about, what you see, what you observe. You've got a family friend who they've got this really great relationship, and you think, that's what I want. So I'm going to put some of those things in this box. And there's some things that you see on TV, and you're like, I don't want anything to do with that. So I'm definitely not going to have that in my box of hopes, dreams, and desires. But more than anything else, it's probably the experiences that you encounter. Maybe even growing up, that most of us, when it comes to our relationships, we're either trying to recreate or avoid something from the past. If you had a father who's kind of an absentee father, didn't really know him, chances are your hope and your dream is not to repeat that, but to avoid that by finding a husband who is going to be faithful to you and to your children. Some of you had a wonderful mom who attended to all your little needs, and so you don't actually say this, but secretly you're hoping for a wife who's just like mom, who will just attend to all of your needs. You're trying to recreate this. Now, there's a problem with this hopes, dreams, and desire box, because the problem is at some point when you find someone, again, we're just going to kind of relate this to marriage for a moment. At some point, what you're going to do is you're going to find that lucky person. And you're going to have a big smile on your face. And maybe it's on that day where you actually exchange rings, but you're going to have this box and you're going to say, here you go. You are the lucky winner. Ding, ding, ding. Now you get to fulfill all my hopes, dreams, and desires, which is so great for you. Fantastic for you. But to them, it doesn't feel like hopes, dreams, and desires. You know what it feels like to them? It feels like a giant box of expectations. And when that weight gets placed on their shoulders, it feels like someone has just raised the bar really high, and they're thinking to themselves, I don't even know if I'm the right person to fulfill all your expectations. I don't know if I can do this all the time. When I was younger, this was before Dana, this was before getting married, I didn't date a whole lot. There was a few, girls that I kind of pursued, and there would be these moments where I was pursuing them, and they kind of liked me, and I kind of liked them, and so we started a relationship. And then there would be this moment where I would catch them looking at me. There would be this certain look. I'm like, what is that? That is a weird look. And then maybe there would be this passing comment. I'm like, whoa, what did that mean? And I'm trying to figure this out because all that look did was place this deep fear inside of me. That comment would just build in this huge amount of fear in me, and I was like, oh my goodness, I just want to what am I getting into? I just got to get out of here. What is it? What is it that was going on in my heart? I don't know exactly. I didn't have words for it then, but I'm thinking now, looking back at it, is I got a glimpse of their box of hopes, dreams, and desires, and they were smiling, they were handing it to me, and when they were looking at me with that little face and they were making that little comment, I did not want to pick up this box of hopes, dreams, and desires. You know what I wanted to do? I wanted to drop it as though it was hot coals and run for the hills. And I know there's a stereotype that men don't want to commit. Like ladies, you've all heard that, said that at time or two. Is it possible, ladies, that we're not actually afraid of commitment? We're just terrified of your box of hopes, dreams, and desires because it feels like this giant weight of expectation. I'm just throwing it out there, maybe. And I'm kind of being humorous with that, but isn't it true? Isn't it true that there's this level of tension that can be placed on us when people finally expect something of us? This is the problem with our hopes, dreams, and desires. Now, we're going to get to the fact that this is a good thing in just a moment, but we're still just kind of diagnosing the problem. Let's go back again to imagine that this is a marriage relationship, and you've exchanged boxes, and probably it's been on the wedding day, right? There's a commitment there. And so you're sorting through your spouse's box, or maybe you're 5 years in, and you finally figured out a few things. And although maybe 90% matches up with your box, there's still that 10% that creates some tension. Or maybe it's the reversal. Maybe there's only 10% that's really compatible, and there's 90% that's not so compatible. At some point, you're going to have some tension. What do you do with that? What choices do you have at your disposal? You've got some choices. Let's look at 4 very, very common choices that you have. The first choice is that you can leave. You can leave the relationship. You can look through this and say, this is not what I signed up for. This is too difficult. This is too hard. Yeah, I'm going to give you your box back. I will take mine, and I will go looking for someone else to give my box to who will actually be able to satisfy all my hopes, dreams, and desires. That's one choice that we have. Another choice is that you can win. Now, in most relationships, there is oftentimes a more dominant personality. And because they're a more dominant personality, what they'll do is they'll kind of sort through your box, and they'll be kind of sweet about it, but they'll say, honey, dear, I'm looking through the box, and I kind of understand why you've got a few of these things in here, but how do I say this without hurting your feelings? Okay, I can't figure it out. I'm just going to tell you how I feel. What's inside your box is ugly and wrong. What we need to do is work out of our box. This is a much better box, and because of their stronger personality, what do? They convince, they coerce, they control, until eventually they win. And it's great for the winner, but not so much for the loser. There's a third choice, and this really is what relates to the loser in that last experience. The third choice is that you can conform. So once you've lost, there's a winner and then there's a loser. The winner really is the one who's conforming. They don't want to make waves. They don't want to stir up trouble. And so they just decide, you know what we'll do is whatever you want to do so that everything can be still peaceful. The problem is the loser typically loses respect for the winner. In an ironic twist, the winner actually loses respect for the one who conformed because they caved. There's a fourth choice. And the fourth choice is typically a win for most couples, and that's to compromise. The fourth and most common choice is typically to compromise. And why is this a win? Well, because they realize we're not going to match up perfectly, and so how about we just do kind of a 50-50 thing? Why is that a problem? Well, one of the reasons why this is a problem is you're building a relationship that's kind of keeping score. You're building a relationship that, well, we did what you wanted last weekend, now we're going to do what I want to do this weekend. No. Last week we actually did what you wanted to do. No. And you create these type of conflicts. This is not a great area. This is not a great training ground for trust, though. This is not something that you can really build trust on. In fact, it will undermine trust. And you're never going to fully give yourself to somebody if you don't fully trust them. So the problem with the whole let's compromise, again, if you don't trust somebody, you're not going to really be close and intimate with them because, again, you're not going to give yourself away to someone that you don't fully trust. So these are all not very good choices. So let's talk about some of the problems here. You've got this expectation and you pass it off to somebody. When you do this, and up until this point, I've really been talking about marriage, and I know some of you are not in that right now. You can see how this relates to almost every relationship, though, can't you? Like when you enter a workplace, like you've got your box of hopes, dreams, and desires for that workplace. You enter a relationship here at church, you've got a box of hopes, dreams, and desires for that relationship at church. So you can relate this to almost any relationship, most prominently marriage, of course. But as soon as you pass off that box of hopes, dreams, and desires, you know what you've done? You've actually created a debt-debtor relationship. You've created a debt-debtor relationship where you say, hey, you know what, the reason why I said yes to the date is because I thought you could possibly do this. The reason I said yes to your proposal is because I thought you were the person that could actually do this. Now you owe me. Now you owe me because that was the deal. Once you put a ring on it, that was the deal. Now you owe me. How much gratitude do you give to someone who pays you what they owe you? How much gratitude do you give to somebody who does the bare minimum of what you've expected them to do? How much gratitude do you give to somebody who does what they're supposed to do? The answer is minimal. You give minimal gratitude to those folks. And this is what I want you to hear. If you have this debt-debtor relationship where you're constantly putting your box of hopes, dreams, and desires, and it becomes this weight of expectation on someone's shoulder, what's happening is I owe, or you owe me, it's undermining I love you. Like when you say, hey, you owe me, what you're doing is you're undermining I love you. How does this work? Let me give you some practical examples in different relationships. Let's say with your kids, you've got a clear idea of what your kids should do and not do. You've got clear expectations when it comes to, you've got to say these words, you've got to accomplish tasks like this, and you've got all these expectations that you place on your children. Well, when they accomplish what you wanted to do or have them do, well, there's a level of, okay, thank you. But what about when they don't? What happens when they don't say the words that you want them to say? What if they don't treat you the way that you expected them to treat you? Is there a lot of love that is poured out of you at that moment? Or is it frustration? Is it oftentimes anger? See, you owe me. Hey, I pay the bills. Hey, I'm your father. Hey, this is how it's supposed to be done. When you have that type of relationship, you owe me undermines I love you. It's related even to your marriage relationship. If you say, hey, you put a ring on it and now I expect that you will involve certain acts of service in our marriage, well, when they perform well, there may be a thank you, maybe there won't be. We've all had those relationships, right? Those relationships that whenever you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do, they don't say anything. But as soon as you mess up, well, they'll remind you, you were supposed to do this. Why didn't you do it that way? We've been in those relationships, haven't you? What about in our marriage? If we start walking through our marriages with this, hey, you owe me mindset, well, when they do what they're supposed to do, it's like, okay, that's nice. But when they don't, what stirs up in you? Is it a lot of love that is stirred up in you? No, because you owe me undermines I love you. You can put this in any relationship context, and this is what we experience. You owe me undermines what? I love you. What are we supposed to do with this? What are we supposed to do with all this hopes, dreams, and desires then? Are we supposed to act like we don't care? Are we supposed to just kind of bury them? Are we supposed to just assume that, at some point maybe they'll figure things out? I mean, are we supposed to act as though we don't want children? Maybe all your life you really wanted children, be like, oh, you don't like kids? Okay, well, they're cute and they're adorable, but, I guess your kitty cat will do. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Yeah, tent life, that's what I want to do. Sure. What are we supposed to do with our box of hopes, dreams, and desires? I think there's a lot of things that we can do, but I think there's really only one thing that we should do. And that is to keep them in your box. What do you mean, Jonathan? Don't they have to get fulfilled with other people? Well, I think it starts with actually asking a question. And it's a question that you probably already know the answer to, but it's a question that you don't even like asking because you don't like the answer. And here's the question. The question is, I think we need to ask, what do other people owe me? Just ask yourself that question. What do other people actually owe me? What does my spouse owe me? What do my kids owe me? What does my church owe me? What does my pastor owe me? What does the government owe me? Just start asking yourself the question, what do people actually owe me? And I want you to hear this. Every great relationship answers that question the exact same way. Great relationships answer the question, what do you owe me? By saying, hey, you owe me nothing, but I will do my best to give you everything. Wait, Jonathan, that doesn't even make sense. Like that's stuff that pastors say that when actually lived out, you just get taken advantage of. That doesn't make sense, but when you look at really great relationships, do they actually make sense at all? Like, when you look at a really great relationship, they don't make sense. They're those relationships that when an offense comes, they forgive instead of holding a grudge and creating bitterness like I do. Like, that doesn't make sense. It's that relationship that even when the world around them is just crashing down, somehow they're finding joy and they're finding purpose in the midst of all of the destruction. How is that possible? That doesn't make any sense. You're right, it doesn't make any sense. But great relationships always answer the same way. You owe me nothing, but I'm willing to step in and give you everything. Where am I getting this, though? Is this just like some random thoughts that I'm getting from my own mind? Stealing from another pastor? No. These are actually the words and the ideas and the thoughts of Jesus, your Savior. And we actually see him communicating this in John chapter 15, over and over again. Most clearly, he says it in verse 12. What did he say? He says, this is my command, love each other. Oh yeah, Jonathan, you had said that one. I wasn't really that impressed with that one, actually. I was expecting more. Well, you're in luck, because Jesus was not finished. He says, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. That's how he finishes it. You need to love each other as I have loved you. That changes everything. The disciples, they would have had a decent understanding of what Jesus was talking about at this moment because they had seen him teach. They had seen him serve. They had seen him do miracles, and so they knew what it was to see that type of love. They've experienced that type of love. But it won't be until the next day when Jesus is arrested and he's put on the cross that it really begins to make sense. See, in just a few short hours, Jesus is going to take their breath away because his breath was taken away. And on the other side of the cross, this idea of, hey, I need to love other people the way Jesus has loved me begins to make sense because it's a sacrificial type of love. It's that love that, hey, even though you don't actually deserve forgiveness right now, I'm still going to forgive you. Even though I am so tired and I'm so worn out, I'm still going to love you. Even though you are not meeting my expectations, I'm still going to step in and give you exactly what you need because that's how Jesus treated me. Let's just think about it just for a moment. Did Jesus owe you anything? Does God owe you anything. Now, sometimes we have this idea, we have this thought that, yeah, God, he owes me something. But does he? Because you're so great? Because you do things right perfectly all the time? Because you've always treated people so well? Because you are such a model citizen that somehow, like, Jesus owes you? No. While we were still sinners, though, Jesus says, you owe me nothing, and I will give you exactly what you need. I will give you everything that you need. Now, go and love people the same way. So I want to give you a little assignment. It's a simple one, but you'll still have to remember in order to do it. What I want to encourage you to do is this week, I want you to evaluate what's in your box. Some people, I talk to people, and they're in a relationship, and they're frustrated, and they're saying, I don't get it. And I start to mine a little bit deeper, and it's obvious to me. Their box of hopes, dreams, desires isn't being met, but they have no idea what's in their box to begin with. They just know they're frustrated. It's like, well, figure out what's in this that's not being met and what you're putting on other people's shoulders. So figure out. Just ask yourself, several days this week, just take the time, maybe 10 minutes, just say, okay, what's in my box? And then second, what I would ask you to do is ask, have you given it away? Have you put this as a burden of expectation on someone's shoulders? Have you been living out this idea that people owe you? And then the third challenge would be, well, how can you shift that a little bit? Where can you dial back on that and just start living with that idea that no one owes you anything? But because of Jesus, you need to start living that idea of, well, maybe I'll still give other people what they need. They don't owe me anything, but I'll do my best to give them everything because that's what Jesus did for me. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for Jesus. Every single day we go through life and we get so busy with so many things that sometimes we forget about the overwhelming love and mercy of Jesus. And so in this moment, as we're getting our hearts ready to either make decisions or just getting our hearts ready to reflect on communion and how beautiful the cross is, Father, we just want to say thank you. Thank you that in the midst of us really being in debt to you, you're the one that paid our debt. And Father, I pray that we would begin living that out in the lives and in the relationships all around us. I pray this in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.